The day my life changed started like any other. I was sitting in the living room, enjoying a rare quiet moment when the doorbell rang. My husband Daniel looked at me with a concerned expression. "Are we expecting anyone?" he asked. I shook my head. "Number, maybe it's a delivery." When I opened the door, it wasn't a package. It was my mother-in-law, Lydia. She was dressed perfectly, as usual, with a smile that didn't quite feel genuine. "Surprise?" she said, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite her. My stomach dropped. Lydia had a way of turning the simplest moments into something complicated. I forced a smile. "Lydia, we weren't expecting you." She glanced around the room, her critical eyes taking in every detail. "I was nearby and thought I'd check on you. This house is cozy." Daniel joined us, his smile polite but tight. "Mom, it's nice to see you, but next time, maybe let us know in advance." Lydia waved his words away. "Oh, family doesn't need invitations. Speaking of family, I have some news." Daniel and I exchanged uneasy glances. Lydia's news was rarely good. She sat on the couch, making herself comfortable. "I've decided to sell my house," she announced. "It's too big for me, and I thought, since you have room here, I'll move in with you." Her words felt like thunder in the room. My breath caught, and Daniel stiffened. "Mom, we haven't talked about this," he said carefully. "What's there to discuss?" Lydia said with a smile. "This house is perfect for me, and I'll be helpful around here. Besides, my house is already on the market. It's almost sold." I tried to stay calm. "Lydia, we appreciate the thought, but this isn't a good time." Her smile tightened. "Nonsense. I've already made up my mind." That night, Daniel and I sat in silence after Lydia left. "What are we going to do?" I asked. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I'll talk to her. She can't just decide this on her own." But we both knew that once Lydia made a decision, it was nearly impossible to change her mind. Days turned into weeks, and Lydia's belongings started arriving at our house. Boxes filled the garage, and she even rearranged the guest room. Her room, as she called it. The tension in our home grew every day. Lydia had an opinion on everything: how I cleaned, what we ate, even how Daniel and I spoke to each other. One afternoon, as I was cooking, Lydia walked into the kitchen. "Sandra," she said sweetly, "I noticed you missed a spot on the counter. Details matter, don't you think?" I clenched my teeth and forced a smile. "Thanks, Lydia. I'll take care of it." The breaking point came when Daniel and I planned a dinner out. As we got ready to leave, Lydia stood in the doorway. "Going somewhere?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Yes, Mom," Daniel said, trying to stay calm. "We made these plans weeks ago." "And what about me?" she said, pretending to look hurt. "Were you going to leave me here alone?" Daniel sighed. "Mom, you're not a child. You'll be fine for a couple of hours." Her face hardened. "Fine. Go. Don't worry about me." Her guilt trip ruined our night before it even began. Later that night, Daniel whispered in bed, "We can't keep living like this." "What can we do?" I asked, feeling helpless. "She's already moved in." Daniel frowned. "We'll think of something." And after weeks of planning, we came up with a way to take back our home. First, Daniel started mentioning senior living communities to Lydia, casually bringing them up in conversations. "You'd have more independence there," he said. Lydia dismissed every idea. Why would I want to live with strangers when I have family? But the idea was planted. The final part of our plan happened on a rainy Thursday. Lydia was out for her weekly bridge game, giving us a chance to act. We packed her belongings into storage boxes and moved everything out of the house. When Lydia returned and saw her empty room, she froze. "What's going on?" she demanded. Daniel stood firm. "Mom, this isn't working. We love you, but we can't live like this anymore. Lydia's face turned red. You'll regret this, she shouted before storming out. For days after, I felt both relieved and nervous. Lydia wasn't someone who gave up easily. Every phone ring made my heart race, but over time, things settled. Lydia moved into a senior community. She still visited occasionally, but her visits were much easier to handle now. One day, she called to invite us over to see her new place. Daniel and I hesitated, but eventually agreed. Her apartment was small but charming, filled with her favorite knickknacks and decorated with her unmistakable style. It's not bad, is it? Lydia asked, her tone almost vulnerable. It's nice, I admitted. You've made it your own. For the first time in months, we shared a moment of peace. Daniel and I finally reclaimed our home and our peace. The experience tested us, but it made us stronger. We faced a storm together and came out better on the other side. As I sat in the living room, the same place where it all began, I realized something. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought loudly. They're fought with quiet determination and love for the life you want to protect. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. A few weeks later, the phone rang again. It was Lydia. I need your help, she said, her voice shaky. My heart sank. What's wrong? It's just, I'm not used to being alone, she admitted. And the apartment is so quiet. Daniel and I exchanged a look. We both knew that while Lydia had her flaws, she was still family. And family didn't abandon each other. Over the next few months, we helped her adjust. We visited regularly, invited her over for dinners, and slowly, the sharp edges of our relationship softened. Lydia even started making friends at the senior community, joining clubs and activities that kept her busy. One evening, as we shared a meal together, Lydia raised her glass. To family, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. For better or worse, we always find our way back to each other. And as we clinked glasses, I realized that while life with Lydia would never be simple, it would always be worth it. But just when I thought we had reached stability, another challenge arose. A letter arrived in the mail one morning, addressed to Lydia. Curious, I handed it to her during one of her visits. The moment she opened it, her expression changed from calm to panic. What is it? I asked, worried. Lydia hesitated, clutching the letter tightly. It's something from the past, she muttered. Daniel stepped in. Mom, if there's something we need to know, just tell us. Lydia sighed deeply, the weight of the letter visibly burdening her. It's from an old friend. Someone I haven't spoken to in decades. They're asking for my help. Help with what? Daniel pressed. Lydia's voice dropped. They're in trouble, financial trouble, and they think I can help. The following days were filled with tension as Lydia debated what to do. She confided in us more than ever, sharing pieces of her past that we had never heard before. Stories of struggles, sacrifices, and a time when she wasn't as composed as she seemed now. Eventually, she made a decision. I'm going to visit them, she announced one evening. But I need your support. Daniel and I exchanged glances. Of course, he said. But are you sure this is the right thing to do? Lydia nodded. Sometimes helping someone else can heal old wounds. The trip turned out to be a turning point, not just for Lydia, but for all of us. It reminded us that even the most complicated relationships can hold the potential for growth, understanding, and redemption. As Lydia reconnected with her past, she also reconnected with us in ways we hadn't thought possible. Life continued to surprise us, but through it all, we learned one invaluable lesson. Family, no matter how messy, is always worth fighting for.